bearing in mind the number of amendments, I worked out, spent 17 seconds per amendment in his response. I gave an example of a mobile phone that ended up on railway tracks interrupting national infrastructure and whether that was within the scope of the bill, for example. Does the Minister feel that his response has been comprehensive enough to the very detailed questions that he's been asked?
Well, I do, I'm afraid, my lords, yes.
I'd like to thank all noble lords who've contributed to this debate. I've really enjoyed it, and I think we are expecting some better answers in the future. The noble lord, the minister, said something about probing us about what we thought, but actually it's our job to probe you about what this legislation means. And so far it's coming up not very well. I mean, personally, I hope it just gets thrown in the rubbish bin, because quite honestly, we're spending an awful lot of time and energy debating it when we know it's awful. It's not as if we can see a glimmer of sort of hope that it could actually solve some problems. And and the noble lord, the minister, talked about damage and disruption that these protesters are doing. In fact, the government has done more damage and disruption to our social fabric than XR or Insulate Britain or Just Stop Oil could ever do. You've had 12 years and you've made the most horrendous mess. To get back to the bill, you didn't answer my question about attach. I still don't know what attach means. I'm happy to wait and hear on another occasion if you have a longer answer. Lord Beath, I loved his love locks, but he's quite right. I've seen him in Paris on bridges, but he's quite right about not dragging innocent people into conflict with the police. And the noble Lord, Lord Paddock, of course, with his excellent challenges to common sense, or the lack of common sense in the bill, and Lady Fox talking about broken infrastructure, absolutely right, trains and NHS and almost everything else, and Lord Sidelsky challenging on what connected with means, and the noble Lord Coker talking about the whole bill lacks clarity. It's a real problem for us when we spend all these hours, all this time, trying to pin things down, and we can't do it. On this issue of the public being furious with the protesters, I think they absolutely are. That's what the polling says. But they agree with their causes. And you have to remember, these protesters, they don't run away from the police. They don't try to avoid arrest. They are accountable, and they accept accountability. They accept prison sentences or whatever. They're not criminals in that way. A criminal tries not to get caught. Protesters actually are happy to take the consequences. I can't bear the thought of all the evenings I'm going to sit in this chamber way past my dinner time arguing through this, but in the meantime I will withdraw Amendment 5.